A common experience when reading a work of continental philosophy, particularly of a postmodern tradition, is a feeling of inadequacy due to the challenge of understanding the author's writings. But one shouldn't despair. John Searle, one of the most important philosophers of language and of the mind of the 20th century, had troubles in reading postmodernist works too.
There are cases where the maxim of clarity, don't be obscure and don't be ambiguous, those are systematically violated, and I think German philosophy has a lot to answer for. See, there was a time when I learned French when the slogan was "Ce qui n'est pas clair n'est pas français." If it's not clear, it's not French. That has been abandoned in French philosophy, and a lot of it is very obscure.
Searle, who is widely known as being the progenitor of a famous Chinese room argument that holds that a digital computer executing a program cannot be conscious, taught at UC Berkeley. In the 80s, he befriended a charismatic visiting professor from France, Michel Foucault, that many would deem the most prominent postmodernist. In the following fascinating audio, you will hear Searle recounting a conversation he had with Foucault.
Don't be ambiguous, don't be too wordy, be brief, be orderly, and avoid obscurity are the four maxims of manner. And I think those are frequently violated. In fact, there are certain schools of philosophy, not ones that I'm sympathetic with, where they're more or less systematically violated. I don't know if I've told you this story, but I once had a conversation with a famous French philosopher who's a friend of mine, and I said to him, "Why the hell do you write so badly? Pourquoi tu écris si mal?" And he said, "Look, if I wrote as clearly as you do, people in Paris wouldn't take me seriously. You know, they'd think it's childlike, it's naive." This was Michel Foucault, and he was a very smart guy and wrote a lot of very good stuff. But in general, he just wrote badly. When you heard him give a lecture in Berkeley, it was perfectly clear, just as clear as I am. So why don't you write clearly? And he said, "Well, in France, it would not be. It would be regarded as somewhat childish and naive if you wrote clearly." And I said, "Come on, now tu te moques un peu de moi, you're making fun of me. Tell me exactly why you write so badly, because in conversation you're just as clear as I am." And he said, "En France, il faut avoir au moins 10% incompréhensible." And that translates as, in France, you got to have 10% incomprehensible. Otherwise, people won't think it's deep. They won't think you're a profound thinker. And I gave a series of lectures in Paris at the Collège de France with another very famous French philosopher as my host, Pierre Bourdieu. And I told this story to Pierre, you know, what did he think of that? And he said, "It's worse than 10%, more like 20%. And I have to say, if you read Bourdieu, yeah, 20% at least is. I once assigned I had admired Bourdieu. I thought he was a terrific guy, and the conversation just as clear as you or me. But I once assigned one of his books for a course I was teaching in Berkeley, The Logic of Practice, and my students couldn't make head nor tail out of it. And the truth to tell, I have trouble.
If it's true that some philosophers in the continental tradition feel forced to write incomprehensibly to be taken seriously, this would have broad and serious implications for the legitimacy of their body of work. It should probably prompt a re-evaluation of the culture and practices derived from it within their fields of study. However, this situation might also provide reassurance to those struggling to understand the seemingly deep profundity hidden in a particular postmodern passage. There's a chance there simply is none.